Are you ready? It's the best I could come up with as a working title. Although there was a second one that came through to me as I was writing this talk, and it was "The Spark of Divinity in Me" is my co-creator. And I want to start with that question: are you ready? Because depending on what we have going on in life, I think more often than not we don't feel ready. Right? If we know something big is coming up, something challenging, something that requires our full presence, it can be challenging to feel ready. It can actually be a little scary. And I want to take a look at this question from 4 different perspectives. Are you ready for yourself to grow? Are you ready for yourself to show up, to evolve? Are you ready to realize the fullness of your self-potential? And then, are you ready for others? Are you ready to be an encouragement to others? Are you ready to help and to guide others? And as well, in relationship with others, are you ready to receive from others? Okay, because there's really we're on Earth as human beings. It's a two-way street, and especially for those of us who are practicing a deep faith, we often think that we're here to be of service to others, and there's almost an obligation. And are we ready to receive as well? Okay, because giving and receiving go hand in hand. Are you ready in the context of your work? Are you ready to do the work, to do your best, to express your genius, to express your purpose? And then, are you ready for the world at the global level? Are you ready to contribute? Are you ready to prepare the next generation, as Sharon is doing right now with the children's church? Are you ready to fulfill or contribute to the social potential movement to evolve humanity? So I wanted to share a little story about my own readiness, and in particular connecting it to what I felt and what I feel is my genius and one of the gifts that I have to offer to the world. And I've probably told parts of this story before, but maybe not the whole thing. And I felt from the very beginning that I wanted to be involved in the media in some way. It was like I was really clear on that. And when I was a little kid, I would cut out the weather map from the newspaper and put it on my bulletin board in my room, and I would play weatherman. And that was like the first thing I really wanted to do. It was like the first vocational thing that I wanted to do, was be a weatherman. And actually, it was then that kind of blossomed more into just this love of the media and being enamored with television and radio and writing and all of these things and newspapers. So it started with that, and that was the thread throughout my whole life and career, is I was always involved in some sort of media and communication. So it was really clear for me. Now, the rub was that as I was developing as a kid, I had a lisp. And when I was in grammar school for like 3rd and 4th grade, and I don't remember exactly how I got in this program, but I actually met with a speech pathologist when I was in grammar school. And I don't remember a whole lot about that experience, other than it got me out of class for a while, so that was kind of nice. But really, I worked with whoever this person was, the speech pathologist, for maybe a year or two, but no real progress. And I continued to have this lisp through school. What was happening in parallel to that was when I was in the earlier grades, teachers would often enjoy my writing, and even one teacher planted the seed that I could be an author someday. So this thread of communication was still supported and affirmed, but I never thought of it so much in the context of broadcasting, because there was this lisp that I had. And in junior high, the irony was I liked public speaking. So I remember speech classes in junior high, and I actually loved to give speeches about demonstrating things. I remember I was really into electronics as well, and building radios and so forth, and I would give speeches about that stuff in my speech class. Now, my list probably wasn't so bad because I don't ever remember being made fun of it. Like, I never got bullied about it, and no one ever gave me a hard time about it, but nevertheless, it persisted through school. And then in high school, I discovered journalism, and was instantly drawn to the school newspaper, and the pinnacle of my high school career was that I was editor-in-chief in my senior year of the high school newspaper. Pardon me? Oh, thank you. Thank you. And then there's more. And then I go to college, Loyola here in Chicago, and I thought I was going to write for the college paper. It was like a no-brainer, right? High school, newspaper editor, going to college, I'm going to continue to be on the journalism track. Well, during the orientation, they took us around in small groups to different places in the school, and during orientation, one of our stops was the school radio station, WLUW. And I was instantly hooked. So Loyola's radio station at that time was actually designed as a kind of a real-world professional lab, meaning a lot of college radio stations, you show up with your records and you just throw them on the turntable and you play them. At Loyola, it was actually programmed like a real radio station, and it had a top 40 format, and it was really fun, and it was very energetic, and I was instantly hooked. And I thought, this is where I need to be, was the radio station. So I didn't even pursue the newspaper at that point. I just went right to the radio station as soon as I enrolled in school. And again, I focused my energy on writing. So there were a couple of weekend music shows that were produced, and I wrote scripts. That was my main thing. Now, this opportunity came up, however. There was a Sunday night slot open, and I was asked if I wanted to actually do my own show. And there were two people that brought this up. So one was the station manager, and then one was the faculty advisor. And I can't remember which one brought it up, but one of them asked me if I would be interested in the show. And I thought that'd be cool. Sure, why not? And then the other was like, well, but you do have this kind of lisp thing. And we need to, if you could work on that, it'd be great. So it wasn't like I was going to get denied the opportunity, and I could do better or do my best if I worked on this lisp. Now, I had this my whole life up until then. Remember, I worked for 2 years as a speech pathologist, and it never got cured, quote unquote. So here I am with this opportunity to be on air, and having this, being hobbled a little bit by this lisp, and then getting introduced to a speech professor at Loyola who agreed to work with me on it. And really, there wasn't anything structurally wrong with my mouth at all. It was just a matter of training. It was just training the muscles in the tongue to work in a different way. So, and I was very motivated because I wanted to take this opportunity and do this program. So I worked with this speech professor at Loyola, and I wish I could remember his name, I can't anymore. But we worked for less than a month, and I fixed it.
Really evaporate when you want to get rid of it.
So something that 2 years, when I was earlier in my childhood, that just never got remedied, here within a month got cured, basically. And I was on the air with the show, and then actually ended up doing a full-time, the full-time midday program during the week later on as well. So I had a pretty deep and extensive on-air presence at the radio station. So, this all brought it together for me. Like, so once, that was one piece that I had never really thought I could do before. And I realized, like, there's something about, like, this gift I had for wanting to be a communicator that then took me to that last step of overcoming something that I thought before was not possible to heal or to overcome. So during the rest of my career, like I was able to use every one of those gifts and those skills, writing, broadcasting and voiceover, editing, and so forth. So I look at that in the context of those four things I talked about. So with myself, just the willingness to show up, to do the work, to evolve. And then I was ready for others. So at the time that I had this opportunity, I was ready to receive help from this professor who was able to be the catalyst for what I'll call my healing. And then ready to do the work. So here I was motivated, had this opportunity, and was ready to do what I needed to do to practice these exercises that he gave me in order to overcome this lisp, which then allowed me to actually express my genius in a greater and broader way. And then as it relates to the world, as I go through my career, I'm at the point now where I feel like all of these gifts are kind of coming together, and I'm able to serve in a much bigger way using this gift of communication and my experiences in the media. So in the context then of consciousness, I consider this as allowing the Spirit to move me. And I think that's true for all of us. Allowing the Spirit to move us, to guide us, to evolve us. Right? So we're never static. Tom Petty, the late Tom Petty had said in an interview, he goes, if you're not getting older, you're dead. And it's true. So we're always in motion in some way. And we always have the opportunity to evolve. And it doesn't have to be great, large things. It can just be in very simple ways or very small ways, but they all add up over time. So we're always being called to something greater than ourselves, to allow the Spirit to move us. This can also be called, in Barbara Marx Hubbard's words, the evolutionary impulse. Right, so if I go back to that college experience, there was something in me that was able to receive the gift of being helped and then going forward and doing this program. So it's the evolutionary impulse that is the thing that allows us, that draws us in and then takes us forward. Now, if we look at it in the context of Christ consciousness, Jesus had said, I can do nothing by myself. And the point there was that it's Jesus' connection with the divine, with God, with the spark of divinity in us that gives us the impulse. Jesus said, if I testify about myself, my testimony is not valid, which means if he's just talking about himself and his ego, and he's bragging about himself, it really doesn't have any validity, because the gifts, the works that we do, that are given to us by the evolutionary impulse, God or the divine, whatever you want to call it, those are the testimony. Those are the things that allow us to show up, encourage us to show up, and then support us when we do show up. So if we look at this from a metaphysical perspective, that spark of divinity, remember our second unity principle is that we all have the spark of divine. The spark of divinity in me, the spark of divinity in you is the co-creator. Right? How else do we appear in the world? How else do we show up? How are we actually animated physically? Like, I can't explain to you what it is that makes my body move. There's some other force beyond my understanding that does that for me and for all of us. So the spark of divinity is the co-creator. I create and you create because we inherit, or we could say we are encoded with the ability and the impulse to create. And that's creation is according to the genius with which we're endowed. So let me just say that one more time. I create, you create, because we inherit or are encoded with the ability and the impulse to create, according to the genius with which we are endowed. And if you're wondering whether you have a genius or you question it, you do. That genius is something. I don't know what it is for each of you, but it is something. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. For me, that genius was in his communication. For others, that genius could be art. I mean, we're in this temple of art, and a lot of people are drawn here. Science, the art of nurturing, like what Sharon's doing right now with the kids. Nourishing, if you love to cook. Technology, business, justice, health, environment, governance, and so forth. Any field in society is connected to a genius and is calling the genius in each of us to serve. And as practitioners of unity, we practice Christ consciousness. So therefore, we are in an evolutionary movement. Jesus was not ever static. He was always in motion, always moving, and always encouraging others. And that's the Christ consciousness that we all have as well, right? If you're not getting older, you're dead. So we are in an evolutionary movement rooted in the principle of co-creation. Co-creation with God, with others, and then with the world. So with that, I want to invite us into a meditation on these truths. And if you're comfortable, just close your eyes or just fix your gaze softly on a spot in front of you. And take a couple of nice deep cleansing breaths. And breathe into your genius. And this doesn't necessarily mean the thing that you're doing for money. But it's the gift with which you're endowed and that you are called to offer the world. And you come into this moment of meditation, and we come into this moment of meditation with no obligation other than to be present. To be aware, to feel our co-creative connection with the divine, and to allow the evolutionary encoding in us to come to the surface, to come to our full awareness. And as you feel more deeply into your genius, invite us all to open our minds and our hearts to the encouragement of the divine, to take that more boldly out into the world. You and we are the latest in a long lineage of co-creators, of ancestors who lived courageously, took risks, dared to show up bigger and better than appearances might suggest. And just know that you are encoded with all of those same traits. Otherwise, you would not be here. So are you ready? And the truth is that the answer is yes, you are. Just breathe in that answer. Yes, I am ready to show up, to express, to be in co-creative relation with others, to express your genius in and for the world. Continuing to open your heart and your mind even greater. And attuning to the consciousness and the energy in this room right now. Just allow yourself to feel connected to everyone in this local space. And in the spirit of that Christ consciousness, just by gathering here together, we are encouraging one another to show up as our best self. That we recognize and feel and we see the spark of divinity in one another. That we live and we move and we have our being in that spark of divinity. Declaring right here and right now that I am alive. I am ready. And I fully and willingly show up to express my genius and give of my gift and receive the gifts of others. So let us take a few moments to meditate on that as the truth in the silence. Silently affirm to yourself, the spark of divinity in me is the co-creator. The spark of divinity in me is the co-creator. Are you ready? Indeed you are. Silently express gratitude for the genius with which you've been endowed, placing complete and total faith in that genius, that it has been granted to you and that it is your divine charter to express it in the world. Now begin to bring your awareness back to your embodied self. Is remaining attuned to the divine code of evolution. Just feel the gravity of the earth holding you where you're seated. Become aware of your breathing rhythm, the inhale and the exhale. And when you're ready, open your eyes, be here, and be aware right now. Amen.